it'll happen quickly before you even know it. You'll be trapped just like the bird.
Wow. You have doctor in front of your name, and you wrote your dissertation on developing discernment in an age of distraction. And man, I think discernment is one thing that more and more parents need to, we all need discernment, but I see a lack of discernment in a lot of people today. And also even for myself, oftentimes I find that I'm not as discerning as I need to be. And this is one of the things I love about my husband is that the Lord has truly gifted him with discernment. And so he oftentimes will be like, okay, let's rethink this idea that you've got going on. So talk to us about this, developing discernment in an age of distraction.
Yeah, it's my life's work, 12 years. And it starts in Proverbs chapter 1 through 9. Chapter 1, something is different than what people are used to seeing in Proverbs. Chapters 1 through 7 is an introduction. It actually starts in verse 8. Hear, my son. The whole book is divided into my son statements. Each time my son appears, something new is being taught. There are 12 wisdom lessons. A child has to pass all 12 lessons in order to reach the level of discernment, which is found in chapter 9. When he reaches chapter 9, he has the highest level of discernment, and the discernment that he gains in chapter 9 is discerning who the Holy One is, which is Jesus. So he gets to understand who Jesus is. He is God, and he's the wisdom of God. And they end up having a personal relationship with him, as opposed to, in contrast to folly. Folly and wisdom both offer almost identical things, only folly offers a substitute. She's an emulator, but she always provides something that is an imitation. It's not the real thing. For example, in chapter 9, wisdom offers bread that she's made herself. She offers mixed wine. She offers slaughtered beef, prime rib. She sets her table. She does all these things. Folly sits at the side of her door. She does nothing. She's lazy. She offers stolen water, and she offers hidden bread. All of it is a facade, but all of it is enticing, lustful, and draws the unsuspecting, simple person into her realm so that they are forever in her hold. And we want to make sure the most important thing we will teach our children, number one, have a relationship with the God of the universe, Jesus. And number two, to be able to discern between good and evil. We just read in the last session about the end of Ecclesiastes talks about we'll be held accountable to whatever is good or evil in our lives. It goes all the way back to Genesis with Adam and Eve. She was unable to discern between good and evil. They had the knowledge of the tree of good and evil before them, and she couldn't discern the deception of the serpent. And so Proverbs starts off. So I can't emphasize this enough. Teaching our children how to discern is one of the most important things we'll teach our children, much more than science, math, English, and history. Even those things are extremely important.
Right.
Discernment is the highest level of thinking. 1 through 7, there are 4 people that are mentioned here. Here they are. Number 1, there's the simple person. It's in the middle of this introduction, the simple person. The second person is a youthful person who gains knowledge. The third person is a wise person who increases learning. And the fourth person is a discerning person who gains by it costing him something. He gains discernment by hanging around with other wise people. He obtains wise guidance, the Bible says. So you got 4 people mentioned here in the introduction: simple, youthful, knowledgeable, wise, and discerning. Those 4 people. In verse 7, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and correction. The word instruction, please translate it as correction. It's more important. Being corrected is the key to discernment. Children who lack correction, and by the way, we're living in a day when people don't want to spank their children. And I'm not, you don't want to hurt your child. You want to be abusive, but you got to follow God's rules. Right. But don't spank a child for character flaws. You spank a child for purposeful disobedience after mercy's been exhausted. Loving children and disciplining children, it takes a lot of time and effort to do that. And we got to do it right. I didn't do it right when I raised my children. I was very, very forceful. And so now now that I see the Bible and the way it's written, God's character emphasizes his mercy is 1,000 times greater than his judgment. And I wanted my children to see my and God's grace more than they saw my judgment. And unfortunately, I didn't do it the right way. So I'm just telling parents now, we don't do the punishment stage until we've exhausted, the discipline, which is correction, and then the reproof, that's a little bit stronger. And then, then the punishment. But you don't do that until you've exhausted correction and then the reproof. And that's what he brings into chapter 1, verses 22 through 27. He says this, he says in verse 22, how long, you simple ones, will you remain simple? How long will you mockers delight in your mocking? And how long will you fools hate knowledge? They hate knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools hate knowledge. Here's the key to this whole thing. You've got 6 people here. You've got the simple, and the simple is, by Hebrew definition, is a thoughtless, naive, easily enticed, gullible person. Everyone starts off that way. We don't want our children to stay simple. We want them to grow to the next level, which is knowledgeable, youthful person. They gain knowledge and they increase in learning. But if you don't grow in knowledge, the next step backwards is becoming a mocker. Mockers delight in their mocking. They put other people down because of their own insecurity. That's what they do. And then the next level after mockers is fools. They hate knowledge. So we don't want our children to ever go in that direction. And that's where the gangs become gang members. They start simple. They believe anything. They're gullible. They're naive. They're thoughtless. They move quickly into a mocking type of character. And then they move quickly into a foolish one where they start to hate knowledge. They become a rule unto themselves. We want our children to grow simple, and then they start to be corrected, and they start to grow in knowledge. And as soon as they grow in knowledge, they start gaining some wisdom. And after wisdom, they gain discernment. Here's the key. This is ready?
Yep.
Chapter 1, verse 23. Behold, I love this. Turn at my reproof. There's that heavier word for correction. I can tell you how a child is going to end in their life. I can tell you what they're going to be like 40 years from now by their willingness to be corrected. Do they embrace correction? Do they see it as an opportunity of growth, or do they see it as a rejection? Do they see it as someone who's putting them down and they're like always resisting it? Children who resist correction at an early age are going to have difficulty in their life. They're the ones that usually go in the direction of meeting their needs in improper ways. But children who start receiving correction at an early age, and this is so important because parents have to model this. They have to emulate it because they have to show a child that they're willing to be corrected. But if they're always talking about somebody, against something, against the pastor, against the boss at work, if they're always coming home and talking against things, they have become a mocker in their own home, and their children will pick it up.
Right.
So here's the key. Verse 23, chapter 1. Turn in my reproof. And this is wisdom talk. By the way, the Father's teaching the first lesson, wisdom's teaching this next lesson. Behold, I'll pour out my spirit to you. I'll make known my words to you. God will pour out his spirit through wisdom and make his words known to us if we're willing to be corrected. And he gives I'll just give you these 2 quick lessons. The first lesson is, my son, verse 8. Listen to what you ready? My son, hear your father's correction. That's the first lesson. Hear your father's correction. The word hear in Hebrew is the word for obey. Obey your father's correction and listen to the teaching of your mother. Mom and dad are the very first lesson. Lesson number 2, verse 10. Choose your friends wisely. Your friends will say, come with us. We're all together in this. I love that. Do I have 2 minutes to tell you what this is going to mean?
Absolutely.
You ready?
Yep.
So he gives you this illustration. He goes, in vain, the net is spread in the sight of any bird. Be careful of the friends that you hang around with, because you will become like your friends. It's 100% guaranteed. Paul writes about it in 1 Corinthians 15, that bad company corrupts good morals. Yep. Here, he uses this parable as an illustration that the net is spread in vain in the sight of any bird. And I thought, okay, well, what dumb bird is going to come down into a net? You put the net down there, and even birds know that they're not going to go into a net that's spread there. Guess what, Yvette? It's the opposite meaning. It doesn't mean that. You ready?
Yeah.
In Hebrew, the word vain there is not havel. It's the word for it doesn't make sense. That's what it means. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to put a net down in front of a bird, but if you put food down on that net, those greedy birds will come right into that net, and you can take those birds. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference if they're if they see the net. Birds are greedy. The word for bird in there in Hebrew is not the word for bird. It's the word, ready for this? Lord of the wing. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Lord of the Rings, but
Yeah.
this Lord of the wing. They're masters of the air, but because they did not master their desires,
Uh-huh.
they'd have no discernment about being caught on the ground. They're masters of the air, but they're undiscerning of the danger of the ground. You get a bird in the air, they're unpenetrable. You get them on the ground, greedy for the food, and God says, you hang around with friends. It'll happen quickly before you even know it. You'll be trapped just like the bird.
Wow.
And then the third lesson is, listen, behold, turn at my correction. The first three lessons, obey correction from your dad, choose your friends wisely, and turn at correction. And God says, I'll pour out my spirit to you, I'll make known my words to you. And then a child is on his way to a healthy level of discerning between good and evil.